Welcome to First Universalist of Rochester, where we are called to nurture the spirit and serve the community. Our normal senior minister, Reverend Lane May Reed, is out of the pulpit today. I am actually your minister of lifespan faith development, and I'm delighted to be invited to preach to you today. My name is Reverend Michelle Yates. I use she, her pronouns, and leading worship with me today are Dolores DeLumba, using she, her pronouns, who is our worship associate today, Dr. Brock Chesvold on the piano and organ, using he, him pronouns for our music, Jack Cunningham, using he, him pronouns for providing tech support, and Lisa Gwinner, using she, her pronouns for our online ministry team. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If you are here with us for the first time this morning or for the first few times, we especially welcome you. Thank you for making it and joining our worshiping community today. We have a visitors form that can be found in the chat for our online folks and that can be found in your pews for our friends here in the congregation, in the building. Please fill out the form so that we can offer you a welcome beyond this worship service. We offer a UU and U session on the third Sunday of each month, following the service in the back of the sanctuary and online. And the next UU and U will be February 19th. Following each service, we have a coffee hour, both in our Clara Barton Lounge, that way down the stairs, and online. Please join us afterwards for some time to connect and build fellowship with each other. Before we take a moment to turn to our neighbor, let us take a moment to turn towards the camera, the green camera, or to wave and greet our online worshiping community.
I'm on here, come on.
If you are online, please pop into the chat to offer a greeting and share your joys and sorrows. And if you are here at First Universalist, let us take a moment to turn to our neighbor this morning and offer a greeting. I'm sorry, I got talking and distracted this time. Let us join in singing together 3 times through hymn 155 on the words on the screen or in the gray hymnal, Circle Round for Freedom.
Yeah. Each soul, all the children, keep the circle, circle around. Circle for reason. Every soul for the children of children. Keep the circle, circle, circle round for thee, for all of thee imprisoned. Circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, the children of keep the circle.
In Let Us Make This Earth a Heaven, Tess Baumberger tenders a passionate plea for inclusiveness. She asks that we make welcome those of different colors, those of different sexual orientations, those with various health concerns, and those with different body forms, and those with varying dispositions. I propose to add to her list those who have lived unseen, on the sidelines, who are just now emerging from the shadows. We are finally beginning to honor the worth of those whose strengths and challenges differ from the norm, who don't easily fit into neat little boxes. It wasn't until the 90s, when I was working at the Children's Inn, that I began to meet members of the neurodiverse population. The Children's Inn was designed to be a home away from home for families whose children were being treated for rare or unusual illnesses at the National Institutes of Health. NIH had been investigating AIDS, HIV, cancer, and other physical illnesses for some time before it broadened its mandate to look at neurological problems. I remember being introduced to one of these conditions in an informal lecture. NIH didn't want the Children's Inn staff to freak out the first time they saw a child bound in a wheelchair. They explained to us that it was a preventive measure meant to keep the children from using their arms as weapons to harm themselves. This kind of behavior was new to me, but I guessed that the condition was not new. In my youth, children had been expected to be seen, but not heard. And children who didn't fit the norm tended to be ignored or hidden away. And when they weren't hidden away, while they may have been looked at, I doubt if many were truly seen. Now, these children are emerging from the shadows of our ignorance and neglect as we finally begin to accept that being different is okay. We are a population of abundant diversity, slowly beginning to erase the stigma of difference and welcome those whose needs and behaviors are different. Let me share an excerpt from Tess Baumberger's vision of what a heaven our society could be if we opened our hearts and minds to all. Let us make this earth a heaven right here, right now. Who knows what existence's death will bring? Let us create a heaven here on earth where love and truth and justice reign. Let us welcome all at our pearly gates, our freedom table amid singing and great rejoicing. Black, white, yellow, red, and all our lovely colors. Straight, gay, transgendered, bisexual, and all the ways of loving each other's bodies. Blind, deaf, mute, healthy, sick, variously abled, young, old, fat, thin, gentle, cranky, joyous, sorrowing. Let no one feel excluded. Let no one feel alone. May we all dwell together in peace and joy and understanding. Let us make a heaven here on earth before it is too late. Let us make this earth a heaven for each other's sake. Come, let us worship together. As Janice Mary Jones lights our chalice at First Universalist Church, and you light a chalice in your own homes, will you join me in saying our chalice words in unison? May we be welcome here to grow in heart and mind and spirit, and may we reach out to serve our community. Please stand and join me in our affirmation of faith, followed by our doxology. Love, the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is the sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the source and meaning of life. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all. We all have so many needs, 1,000 prayers, 1,000 needs that really only need one answer. Let the world not be indifferent. And may we live and be with each other in the way that shows this truth, whatever the day brings, that neither are we indifferent to each other. You are invited to drop an offering in the offering basket or to give online by scanning the QR code in your pew. For folks online, please click the link in the Zoom chat window to give to First Universalist Church. You can also send a check in the physical mail. Thank you for your generosity.
Thank you so much to our choir for honoring my request to sing that song today. I love it. It's my favorite. This story I'm sharing today is a favorite in my household because it's funny. And I think it also, in many ways, affirms our Universalist values to be loved no matter what. And the child asks, will you still love me if I am unlovable in this way? If you will still love me if I am undesirable in this way? Can we always answer yes and find ways to meet the need of whatever that perceived unlovable, undesirable feature may be? So the story is I Love You, Stinky Face, written by Lisa McCourt and illustrated by Sid Moore. Yay! I love being able to show these pictures big for you. Mama said, I love you, my wonderful child. But I had a question. Mama, what if I were a big, scary ape? Would you love me then? If you were a big, scary ape, I would make your birthday cake out of bananas. I would tell you, I love you, my big, scary ape. But mama, what if I were a super smelly skunk and I smelled so bad that my name was Stinky Face? Then I'd plunk you in a bubble bath. But if you still smelled stinky, I wouldn't mind. I'd whisper in your ear, I love you, Stinky Face. But mama, what if I were an alligator with big, sharp teeth? I'd buy you a bigger toothbrush. And if your throat hurt, I'd still look inside your huge mouth and I'd tell you, I love you, my dangerous alligator. But mama, what if I were a terrible meat-eating dinosaur? Then I'd make you a mountain of hamburgers to eat. I'd say, I love you, my sweet, terrible dinosaur. But mama, what if I were a swamp creature with slimy, smelly seaweed hanging from my body? Then I would live by the swamp and take care of you always. I'd tell you, I love you, my slimy swamp monster. But mama, what if I were a green alien from Mars and I ate bugs instead of peanut butter? Then I would fill your lunchbox with spiders and ants and the tastiest bugs you ever had. And I'd pack a note with all the bugs that said, I love you, little greenie. Bon appetit. But mama, what if I were a one-eyed monster? Then I would look you right in your one eye and say, I love you. And I would sing you to sleep until your one droopy eyelid finally closed and you fell fast asleep. I love you, mama. And I love you, my wonderful child. I invite you into this reverent time of sharing the joys and sorrows of our gathered community. If you would like to, you can place your hand over your heart to be able to focus and listen from a heart-centered place. As we place stones into a bowl, I will read aloud the joys and sorrows of our gathered community. All are also invited to share your joys and sorrows in the chat that we may hear from the community gathered there. Today we have two joys here from Eileen Fernandez, that she is joyful to be back and well. And thank you for the calls, cards, and concern. We love you. And another joy to be proud to be a member of First Universalist. Reverend May Reed was wonderfully articulate on the radio show on NPR on Evan Dawson's show recently. We drop one stone into the bowl for all the joys shared in our online community. And we drop one stone to represent the sorrows of our online community. And one final stone to represent all of our joys and sorrows left unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts today. May all be held in the heart of love. I invite you to settle into this time and space together. Perhaps this is the only really quiet time you've had all week. Take a breath. Breathe deeper and more intentionally than you have yet this morning. Breathe deeper and more intentionally than maybe you have this week, than maybe you have this year. Hold each other in light and love. I'm going to share a reflection from Etna O'Danner, speaking to her experience of being Black, queer, and neurodivergent. I recently bridged some holidays with time off to create a 2-week vacation, declaring it hibernation season. I vowed to slow down, enjoy myself, and resist the unnecessary urgency, and let my mind and body renew. Intentionally adding measures of comfort to my routines felt wonderful. Yet I found myself repeatedly defending my right to ease and demanding justification for my self-care. Audre Lorde was right, of course. Resisting this programming is radical. I am a Black, queer, neurodivergent woman. My experience at the intersection of these identities has meant a life of intersecting hurdles for well-being because of the ways people and systems respond to these identities. Every day is a decathlon of hurdles when I'm just trying to be. Increased risk of heart disease, depression, breast cancer, infant mortality, COVID-19, and more for so many of us just trying to be. It is hurtful and infuriating that people accept that that's just the nature of our story, particularly here in the US. Our society is exceedingly effective on pissing on Black people and calling it rain, so people accept that we are naturally defiled. This seemingly inexhaustible cultural lie is applied to queer lives and disabled lives too, when we are made to believe we are fundamentally worthless or worth less and must earn our right to live. Then others can profit from the belief that our reason for living is to prove and to earn and to justify our lives, to hustle. As a Black, queer, neurodivergent somebody, I want well-being to be my truth. I must reclaim and protect it. This is why I committed to a season of rest, why my citadel is my warm bed. Every chance I get, I am reclaiming well-being. Let us cast a spell for rest and renewal. Let us draw on the power of house plants, candlelight, laughter, and dreaming, to reclaim the rest that will heal us. In defiance of white supremacy or ableism and patriarchy, let us refuse to light the other end of our candles. Let us will boldly to protect our softness, to defend our sleep, to liberate all of our unassigned minutes, hours, and days. We are each one soft animal among many, a cell in the breathing world of the earth's and the universe's body. Let us be cared for as such. Amen. Please join in our hymn of contemplation, meditation on breathing, with the words on your screen or in your teal hymnal number 1009. I breathe in peace, and I breathe out. I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Breathe in, breathe, breathe, breathe. Thank you. Thank you for this invitation to preach to you today. In filling out the template I had saved on my computer, I realized I haven't done this since we were all online. It's been a while. And I want to apologize and put forth in advance that I am not a doctor. I am not an expert. I am learning and growing and learning about neurodivergence every day, just like you are. And of course, most importantly, I'm sharing from my experience. So I would love to hear about your experiences and how it differs. And I apologize if I am not capturing your experience or speaking to your life. Because the story is always broader and wider, right? Always. When I was in middle school, so I have a stepbrother and two half siblings who I was raised away from, but I'd see every other weekend and things like that. And my stepbrother and some of my siblings had ADD and ADHD. And in middle school, my mother came to me and she's like, maybe some of the struggles that you've had with your mind wandering and not being able to focus, it's that ADD looks different in girls than it does in boys. And I think, there could be some techniques or ideas we could talk to your doctor about what could help you. At that point in my life, I detested my stepbrother and his ADD behavior. And I refused. No, not me. I am not that. I do not act like that. I am nothing like him. And I wouldn't hear anything more about it. And maybe I should have opened that door to that. And then later in high school, teachers would label me the official class royal slow person when I could not keep up with taking the notes that they felt that us writing down meant that we were learning, and that I would never finish tests on time. And they'd say, this, you're very smart. You just need to go faster. I was going as fast as I could. And in college, in my economics class, a professor finally said to me, have you considered being tested for a learning disability? And I was insulted. I am fine. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me. See, it was already so embedded in my mind that I didn't want anything to be wrong with me, that there was nothing broken about me. I needed to do everything I could to pass, to mask, and to not be put into that category. I was already weird and different and all those other things. I didn't need anything else. But he said, if you get a diagnosis and you submit that to the Office of Disabilities, you can get more time on tests. Well, that's a golden ticket right there. I could do so much better on my grades if I could just get more time on tests. So that was the only reason that I went for disability testing. I had no idea the range of learning disabilities and cognitive processes. So I have an auditory and central processing disorder. So what that means is that when someone is talking to me, my brain has to translate always. I hear you just fine, but it's like I'm translating from another language all the time. So sometimes I'll go, what? And I heard you, but it just takes an extra second for my brain to figure out what you actually said. And a central processing disorder means sometimes it's hard to hold multiple pieces together at the same time, like word problems were the bane of my existence. Like I can't juggle. It's like juggling. Like I can only juggle two things at a time. And so I've had to find other techniques, writing things down, putting them in front of me, visual aids to hold multiple concepts at a time. So you'll notice I take a lot of notes in meetings and I'm drawing lines between concepts so that I can hold them and get them into my brain, because otherwise it's like you're talking a different language. And I always thought that there was something wrong with me. And that's part of the challenge, right? You don't want to be labeled. You don't want to be broken. And then I went on to meet my husband, who also has an auditory and central processing disorder, which it tends to work well because we use the same coping mechanisms and have similar needs. We love closed captions. Can't even go to a movie without them. There are some places that do offer movies with closed captions. We'll love to go and see the big picture. And we're like, that looked cool. I can't wait to watch it again with closed captions because I missed half the dialogue. Don't know what's going on. And we do a lot of sight reading or lip reading. And then I went on to have experiences with my own stepkids who have a varying degree of ADHD and depression and anxiety and other concerns. And I thought, gosh, after all of this time and experience, we can have another kid. We can do anything. And it might be a little crass, but I feel like in that moment, God said, hold my beer. Because I got the most extra kid who has more energy than I ever thought any person could possibly have. I am sure, although he's not old enough yet, that Walter will be diagnosed with ADHD. But the real learning point, and I was so grateful in pre-K3 that his teacher recommended he get tested and have early interventions. I'm like, yes, please help me bring forth the interventions. Help me. That he has sensory processing disorder. Now, when I thought about sensory issues, I had only thought about people who have sensory overload, that they need headphones or less stimulation, but that is only one of the three primary categories of sensory processing disorder is avoidant, that it's too much. There's also a low sense where like whatever you do, it's kind of like, oh, you're poking me? Okay. Oh, that's loud. I didn't notice. Because their bandwidth for senses is small. Like it's not overwhelming. It's not overwhelming to them at all. And then there's the sensory craver, who they can never get enough. That's my son. So instead of saying it to you, they have to scream it at you. Instead of hugging you, they need to body slam you. And it just they need to feel it deeply. And as I learned about sensory processing disorder, you were taught we have 5 senses. It's a lie. We have 8 senses. Nobody talks about it, but it's hard. It's hard to understand when they teach about the senses in elementary school. Like, okay, you can point to body parts, and feel is a tough one, right? But the 3 other ones are even trickier. So there's internal. What tells you that you're hungry? What tells you that you have to go to the bathroom? What tells you that you have a tummy ache? Those are your internal bodily senses. And then there's like that inner ear working. Where are you in space and time? Am I upright right now? I don't know. So if somebody kind of feels a little off kilter and all over the place, it might be a spatial awareness sense. They might not know which way is up. It's hard to orient. And then it's called the proprioceptive sense, but I like to call it's your spidey sense. This is your lizard brain. This is your fight, flight, or freeze. And sometimes you don't have much of one. Ah! Okay. And other times, every minute of the day as you're walking around, you are hyper vigilant. And often, people could say they have an anxiety problem, but it might actually be a central nervous system problem with their proprioceptive system. Mind blown. And then as I read about this, okay, there's all these 8 systems. You could be really sensitive on one end and low sensitive on the other end and craving on the other. We are all over, each of us individually on the spectrum. And as I read about it, I think, that's me. That's my mom. That's my husband. That's my kids in these different little examples. And so how do you know? I'm like, gosh, we all have processing disorders in different little ways. We've all got our quirks. But when does it become a problem is when we can't pass, we can't mask, and we then have needs or behaviors that are outside of the norm. And the problem is, will that be loved? Am I still lovable? Are you willing to make space for me, to make accommodations so that I can do what you can do, to understand the way we all learn and experience and sense differently? So at this point, what is neurodivergence? So broad. It can be a brain-based disability like OCD, obsessional compulsive disorder, anxiety, depression, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, complicated PTSD, autism, which is a very wide spectrum, learning disabilities, intellectual disability, schizophrenia, migraine disease, traumatic brain injury, post-stroke cognitive and communication difficulties, and dementia. Any way that your brain or nervous system functions differently, that might have different needs or abilities outside of neurotypical framework. And so just some real quick information bombs that I'm learning. There's a challenge with amongst the neurodiverse community, forced intimacy. Everybody wants to know your diagnosis, or if you want certain accommodations, you have to prove that you have earned it. You need to have tests, you have to have diagnoses, and you have to share this in a very forced intimacy kind of way. Amongst the community, there is a thing called Aspie supremacy, that on the Asperger's spectrum, that it is better to be, on the autism spectrum, that it's better to be diagnosed with Asperger's, which is a word that is going out of vogue, at least in the US, because it came from a Nazi doctor as a way of designating those in the internment camps who are still able to work, as opposed to being sent off to the gas chamber. So we're trying to get rid of that. It's not in the DSM anymore. There is the difference between what autism parents have asked for in the past and what now the community itself is asking for. And a big thing here, you might remember there was a transition to saying, don't say the person is disabled, say they are a person with a disability. But now disabled communities are saying, this is part of who I am and my identity. I am autistic. And so that's definitely the trend things are going in. I am autistic. I do not speak. But of course, there's always the area of preference. So just like pronouns, ask. Let's see, that it's diminishing to say everyone's a little bit neurodivergent, because we are, but when you are far on the spectrum, it is a very different life experience trying to get around. Like, can you imagine needing a wheelchair before the ADA compliance? Like, well, I can't go anywhere. So no, you're not just like me. To say to someone, you don't look neurodivergent to me. Like if someone comes out and says, oh, I'm autistic. I have autism. Oh, you don't look autistic. Thanks. Weirdo. And even when people can mask, assimilate, and camouflage very well, does not mean it is not exhausting to do so, because they have to be on that much higher. For me, this comes through, I always feel really guilty that it takes me so much longer to do things than I think some of my minister peers do. You know, they'll talk about how long it takes them to do a this or to do a that. But then there are other areas that for some reason I do really well. It takes me a really long time to write a newsletter article. I am sorry, Emma, wherever you are. But I can preach from notes, and lots of ministers can't do that. I prefer to kind of be more ad-libby and engaging. So it's strengths and challenges. It looks different. There are gifts. So that's what I want to talk about next is neurodiversity throughout history. I have heard so much lately that people are like, well, you know, I think there's a lot more autism and neurodiverse people now than before. And they start talking about the vaccine issue or nutrition. And I'm going to say, I don't know about that. I'm not a scientist, but what I do know is that there is a broad history that they are talking about more and more of famous people that, like, you know, I think they had this neurodiverse issue going on. And these were usually people who are great at thinking outside the box. And the other thing that I know is that when it is difficult to deal with someone, our society historically has a way of getting rid of them, of not seeing them, of hiding them. And especially even up until the 50s or 60s, to see a child who was born who might have challenges of killing them and letting them die. Are we seeing neurodivergent people more? Yes, they're able to come out of the closet. They don't have to hide. Their families aren't institutionalizing them. They're being allowed to live and have families. So yeah, that's new. And not being, and throughout history, we didn't have diagnoses. We just say they were odd. They're an odd duck. They're a little different. Watched a great movie on the electric life of Louis Wayne recently. Very cool. Just a new area of neurodivergence that I wasn't aware of. Famous people who, had these struggles, and people were like, oh, they're just a little weird. Yeah, we are. Just a little weird. It's me. And so how do we talk about these things? And historically, there are three models for discussing neurodivergence for many, many, many years. It's the moral model. God has judged you. You or your parents or your ancestors or your city did something wrong, and now God has done this to you as a punishment. And we have to take care of you to try to make it right. Or sometimes probably the better angle in rare experiences, that this is a gift that you can see and interact with the spirit world. And on the lower end, you're possessed by demons and we're going to kill you. Luck of the draw where you're born on that one. Then there's the medical model, which is very science-based. Your brain and nervous system are different. And medicine likes to cure things. So we're going to figure out why you are different, why you are broken, are ill, and we're going to try to fix you. Sometimes it's great to have help, but it doesn't always feel good to be stuck in the you're broken model. And then there's the social version, which is really what is socially acceptable? What is the norm? How do we have community with people? And when you have a very rigid guideline for what is socially acceptable, then that tells you who is neurodivergent, who is out, who is odd. Or can we change that model to simply thinking about what everyone needs to be accessible, to not just have one fits all model? Because that's the challenge that neurodiverse people usually come into is, you need this kind of accommodation. Well, that's expensive. Which kind of says you're not worth it. And this is another important thing, especially when talking about neurodiverse people. They don't necessarily want to out themselves and say what they want. In the autism community, they really want to get away from high functioning, low functioning, like, duh. Yeah, go ahead, label me. You suck. Thanks. But to talk about what they need. And can't we all do that? Can't we all just talk about what we need? I need to have words in front of me. I need things to go slower. I need a hearing loop. Rather than saying what our challenges are, but what we need to be connected, to be part of the community. And so in our month of boundaries, what is it? What means you're in? What means you're out? What is our gatekeeping? I could have also used for a story today, the ugly duckling. Where do I fit? Where do I belong? And as always, I talk too much. Go through this. So what does it mean to be radically inclusive as you use or to individuals who are neurodivergent? Really quick, the issue of covenant. Covenant is the root of what it means to be Unitarian Universalist. This is the ground of our faith. These are our shared values of how we promise to be with each other and in the world. And some people are very allergic to this world because they're thinking Old Testament covenant, right? Moses, 10 Commandments, you have to be this way to be my people, but then Jesus says, I am here to bring you the new covenant. This is where Universalism started. Forget everything else. Forget Leviticus. Forget the 10 Commandments. Love God and love your neighbor. And as you use, it's kind of open. What is love God? Love the universe, love nature, love the divinity within each of us. That's the covenant. And when we make our covenants, our affirmation of faith, our group covenants, it's how are we to love the divine, the sacred in this space, in our world, and in each other. And right now, really exciting, I'm talking about it on Tuesday in the discussion group, Article 2, the least sexy name for the most important thing going on in UU world right now. It's our principles and purposes. It hasn't been revised for over 20 years, like in the 80s, when I was born. Yes, you know how old Article 2 is. Instead of having 7, so many people don't know the principles, like right off the top of their head. I had to work really hard to memorize them. Minister, should know those things. But now they're looking at how do we position them more like a flower or a web, with just value words that of course go deeper, but words that are easier for us to remember with, of course, love at the center. Universalism. How do we love each other? How does love move us in the world? And so practically, how do we do this? How do we radically love and include people who are neurodivergent in our congregations? I feel like the starting point of cultural change on everything is curiosity. Isn't that interesting? I want you to practice this look at home. Whatever ever happens around you. Interesting. That's really interesting. When someone is coughing or a kid is crying or someone's having a meltdown or exploding or something crazy happening around you. Interesting. Observe. Notice. Be curious. What's going on for that person? What's their need for love and security right now? What's my need for love and security with my behavior today? Something I learned from a Quaker friend, hold someone in the light. If I'm up here and I'm flustered and everything's falling apart, have people look at me like, why is she here? If I bring my kid into a place and he's like, oh, and people are like, bad kid, bad mother. Not helpful. But if we can say, they are going through something right now, and hold them, like do your projection, hold them in your light and in their love. They need my light and love right now. Can I help you? What can I do? We've got you. Take your time. We're all here. We're in this together. Me too. And looking for tools. Please explore our new Pew Pals ideas out there. And they're not just for kids. You'd be surprised how many adults need something to do with their hands. We are kinesthetic learners. Just sitting in the pews, this does not come naturally to everyone. Leaving space to knit or whatever. There's some great little visual learning components, watching bubbles drip or glitter fall or squeezing something. It's amazing, and I invite you to try it at home, using some of these more different learning modalities, how you might be able to learn and take in information better or differently when you're using different senses in different ways. And to appreciate, like, oh, wait, isn't that an interesting sensory thing about myself? I wonder how that would be experienced by someone who had it even more extreme than I. And buddies. To notice, people aren't going to necessarily out themselves and be like, hello, new person, neurodivergent, but being open to being a buddy to whoever walks in the door, whatever behavior is there. Let me be your greeter, your guide, not just to say hello, but like, oh, do you know where the bathroom is? This is just the welcoming community stuff, but are we okay with being a buddy and getting to know ourselves and getting to know someone else in a more intimate, loving way, just by being fully present with them. And overall, how do we do this? It's complicated, and I don't know exactly. The mommy wars are a real thing on how to parent neurodiverse kids, and I'm sure it's just as out there and crazy on how to work with neurodiverse adults. But what I do know, as a mother and as a minister, you will never go wrong responding to someone with love and offering them belonging. We'll never go wrong responding and reaching out to someone with love and belonging, because we all need that. And that just helps us to be our best selves. We are all just doing the very best we can at any given moment. And I want to end with an amazing quote that Theo shared on the video that went out in the reflections today, or this week. Beloved community, where all souls are welcomed as blessings, and the human family lives whole and reconciled. Where all souls are welcomed as blessings, and the human family lives whole and reconciled. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be. Please join us in our closing hymn, When I Am Frightened. We don't do this one very often. It's often used in child dedications, but how often it can apply to any of us. Please remain standing as we extinguish our chalice flame this morning and read together the words printed on the screen or in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. As we close the service this morning, I invite you to place a hand over your heart. If you're joining us online, I invite you to turn your settings to gallery view and look upon the faces of those here with you. For those of us in this room, take a moment to look around at those here with you today. Our companions on the journey. None of us are alone. We are all in this together. Within each of your hearts, there is a glorious light. Go forth and let its spark help you understand what troubles both you and others. Go forth and let its light of reason be a guide in your decisions. Go forth and bring its ray of hope to those in need of help, both in body and spirit, that they may find healing. Go forth and fan the flames of passion to help heal our world. Go forth and spread the warm glow of love, pushing back the darkness of the world. Go forth and share your glorious light with the world. And let the people of the church say, Amen.